Welcome. So this is the Leadership Challenge intro webinar, and it's just half an hour. And for those who are here, great. You can also listen to the replay again if anything is unclear. I believe this is probably the fourth time that we are offering the Leadership Challenge. And so far, 80 people throughout the organization have gone through the challenge. And our goal is to reach to double that by the end of the year. And this class, Spring 2019, actually, we had a huge amount of people signing up, and we have people going into the fall. So there are like 35 of you who signed up, so it's really exciting. Usually we have about 30 or something less than that. So it's a really good thing. And so Dan Schwab, you can see him on the screen here. He's one of our instructors. And on the other side, there are plant people. Rich Avery is over there. And so the focus of today, this half hour, is just to go over how to get ready for the 2-day workshop in late March and the first week of April, and then how to complete that leadership practices inventory. Rich, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we're okay.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Dan then.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I hope things are going well up there in Sacramento today. This is Dan Schwab. I'm down in Berkeley, and I'll be one of the instructors in the Leadership Challenge workshop. And this is being brought to you by Integrith Performance Advisors. Our job is helping government agencies and others create more effective workplaces. It's a great job. And as Carmen just said, this is will be the fourth program that we've done with your two agencies. I'm really excited to be back with you coming up here in another month or so. And today, yeah, as Carmen said, just to help you prepare for this workshop, because it is intense. We have 2 full days together. They're spread out over a week, which makes it a little easier, but there's a lot to be thinking about in preparation for this. And I want to give you just some heads up on that, as well as clarifying what you need to do to be engaged with this 360-degree assessment we use called the Leadership Practices Inventory. And you'll want to get started on that right away. So we'll launch it in the next few days. So I'll explain how all of that works. And also just briefly, we'll touch on, well, what is this model about leadership that is brought forth in this book and this workshop, the Leadership Challenge, and how can you start to be thinking about that? I think you'll find it to be both familiar and useful. And then, of course, if any questions come up, that's all good, fair game. This should take certainly no more than half an hour to get through everything we need to talk about. So that is not me. That is Gwen Volpel, and she will be the other instructor in the class. She is dynamic, fun, and really good at presenting these materials. And that's me. I guess I do okay too. Between the two of us, we probably presented this workshop to thousands of people. That's true. I've been involved in leadership education for about 25 years, so really happy to bring this to your agency. And just to start out, we'll talk a little bit about, well, okay, why would we talk about leadership anyway? Don't we already know it when we see it? Well, I'm an educator by training and background, and what I realize is that everything we do well are things that we've learned to do well. And let's make it a little bit more intentional about how we talk about this topic of how we help people lead, that is, stay at the forefront of the organization moving things forward. And there's a lot of reasons to do this. I don't think you have to look very far from where you're sitting right now to realize how quickly things are moving in every industry, technology, regulation, the things that affect the day-to-day work that go on. And you as an agency, of course, want to stay at the forefront of that, which means that you as individuals need to stay at the forefront of that, because leadership is about the future. So what future are we looking to create? There's also a lot of shifts in the workforce. We have 4 generations in the workforce now. Younger people want different things from their leaders than maybe people who are a little older. There's a lot of people moving out of the workplace as well into retirement. And how are we taking the best of what people have to offer and leveraging it for the good of the organization is one of the reasons we talk about leadership. Because of course, we need to move faster. We need to be bold about what we do and efficient. I just have to say that what you do in your agencies really matters to me, because I live right down here next to San Francisco Bay, and everything that flows out of the Sacramento River comes right by my house. So it's important to me that you guys do a good do good work. And of course, you want to be leading that and not lagging that. You want to be the most effective wastewater agency in California, no doubt. And it's also, as Rich pointed out to me the other day, it is a truism that great organizations have great leadership. That's not a quantity that you can go down to Walmart and buy. We have to develop people to be more effective leading others. It's essentially an educational process. And we're well into this project now with your agencies because, as Carmen said, we've done about 80 people. So we're getting the conversation going. And the other thing that's really important to realize is we have much better tools for educating people on this topic now than we had even 10 years ago. And I'm happy to be able to present Leadership Challenge because it's very, very good material. It's all evidence-based, very deeply researched, and thought-provoking. It's good for us to think about. So with that, a little context here, I understand I've worked in big organizations too. The largest organization I worked in had 6,000 people. And I'm very aware of how complicated work can become and how one process or system can be layered on top of another. So we end up with something that looks like this, maybe. And you could say, well, what's the problem? The water's still coming out. But we know that everything can be improved, that all of us every day have an opportunity to make the workplace a little better. And we're going to ask you to come to the workshop having thought about what's an opportunity that you have in the scope of your current job to be just a little bit more active leading other people. So the way I like to start out with this is to realize that the word leadership is a noun, which would give you the thought that it's a commodity that we can go purchase it or something, when that's just not the case. To lead is a verb because what we're going to do in this program is present to you the behaviors of leadership, i.e., what is it that leaders do that make them more effective? And in this way, we really believe that leadership belongs to everyone. It's not just Prabhakar's job to be the leader of the organization. He's just one of many. It's about the behaviors you exhibit every day and not just the job position you have that makes you a leader. And when the Leadership Challenge research was initiated in 1985, this is the question that the authors posed to themselves as an inquiry into what is it that we mean by leadership anyway, by asking what practices do people engage in as leaders that makes them different from other people, other competent people, other successful people. And that question has now been investigated in 6 editions of the Leadership Challenge book and a whole constellation of products under the Leadership Challenge brand. These are the authors, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. I've known them personally for a long time. They're very interesting fellows who followed this question about, well, what does leadership look like and how do we teach people to do it? Because the truth is, we can teach it. And now the research, there's a few data points on the slide that show the depth and the breadth of what we've done with this. We've taken data from more than 81 countries now, so this is not just North America. This is Asia, Latin America, Europe, Africa, all over the world. We've studied this. More than 3 million people now have participated in the Leadership Practices Inventory Assessment, the same one that you will be doing. So we have a very deep data set around this, which we'll explain in the class. And in addition, there's been more than 600 research studies conducted about the Leadership Challenge research and the Leadership Practices Inventory by other people, mostly academics, and they're all on a website. You can look at it if you're curious. And the book itself has now got about 2 million copies in print. The most recent version came out just 2 years ago. So that's a little background that shows the depth behind what we're going to present to you in the class. And what we're going to do is base the class around an understanding that there are 5 practices that leaders engage in: to model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and to encourage the heart. And when you put these 5 together, essentially what you've got is a roadmap of what to do to be more effective leading people around you, whether that's at work or at home or in your community or in a school or the military or any place. Do these things more frequently and you will be more effective. That's what the research tells us. very thoughtfully put together materials. Now, I'll say just briefly about the 5 practices. That model the way is essentially saying that leaders have to walk the talk, that we have to be authentic, speak in our own voice, live our personal values, set the example for other people. Now, this is not a novel thought, I'm sure. We all know that we need to be real with one another, if you will, and that leaders, the first thing that builds our credibility is that people can relate to us because we are being our true self. So we'll talk about how you can model the way a little bit more effectively as we go through the class. The second practice of exemplary leadership is to inspire a shared vision of the future. As I said before, leadership is essentially about the future. And there are 2 parts to this, that each of us be a little bit more active imagining what possibilities there are in the future. Look a little farther ahead and see what's coming down the track that could be exciting to people around you, to say, here's what we could do, so that people will want to join you in that. And enlist people in that common vision by communicating about the possibilities that you see ahead of us. Most of us could do this more. In fact, most of us could do all of these practices a little more. And as you'll see, it's all about frequency. I'll say more about that in a minute. Challenge the process is the third practice, and it's the one that's most familiar to most of us, because we know that we have to continuously improve what we do. There is no end to improvement, and those of you who are in engineering and dealing with wastewater, of course, you're always improving the way we do things. So as leaders, it means that we're looking for opportunities to change things. We're not waiting for it to come to us. We're being proactive in that way, and also recognizing that improvement is usually a trial and error process, that we have to try things, figure out what works and what doesn't, help people feel safe about the idea of taking appropriate risks, and so that we come to the best improvement step by step. And as leaders, it's also a true statement that all the work gets done by people, the people around us. We don't lead by ourselves, we lead with other people. We guide other people to higher performance. So that means we should enable others to act, to help other people feel more capable, stronger. It's about creating a trustful relationship with people in the workplace, so that people can do their best work. It's about helping people build their career paths, develop their skills. A lot about learning built into and how we enable, which this program, of course, is a part. And then the 5th practice, and the final one, is that as leaders, we encourage the heart by showing contributions, or recognizing people's contributions in the workplace by saying thank you in creative and sincere ways, assuming people have earned it. And also to create a sense of community, that we're all in this together. It's about the culture of the workplace. And it turns out that this 5th practice of encourage the heart, our evidence shows us, is just as important as the other 4. So as we go through the workshop, we will tell you a lot more about what these 5 practices mean, where they came from, how to engage in them more frequently. And also, we'll show you how other people experience you engaged in these practices now. And we'll do that through the leadership practices inventory assessment, because it turns out that not only is all this leadership stuff learnable, it's also measurable. And we have a very good tool to do that with, called the LPI for short, or Leadership Practices Inventory. And that's what we call a 360 assessment, meaning that you get feedback from people all around you, not just your boss, but from your direct reports, your colleagues, a group called others. I'll explain more in a moment. So that you get a comprehensive view of how people see you engaged in these 5 practices. As it turns out, there's actually 6 behaviors for each of the 5 practices, so there are 30 altogether, and that's actually what the LPI is based around, are these 30 behaviors of leadership. And the LPI really triangulates qualitative and quantitative methods with these personal best case studies that we've asked people to engage in. So it really gives you a clear view of how people experience you as a leader, so that you can recognize your strengths. Of course, that's where we start, but also identify a few places where you could be a bit more effective. The LPI only measures one thing, which is really very interesting. It only measures how frequently people see you doing certain things. It doesn't measure your IQ or your personal style or whether people like you or not. It's just how often do I see this behavior? And from that, we can see where the opportunities are for you to be more frequent or more intentional about some of these behaviors. All the input that you get from your observers on the LPI is confidential, with one exception. And that would be your manager if you only have one, because that data coming back to you will be labeled as coming from your manager. And if there's only one, of course, you'll know who that is. But you can have as many as you would like in any of the four categories of manager, direct reports, coworkers, or others, so that you get a comprehensive view of how people experience you from perspectives. Now, the LPI has been around for 30 some years. It's a very valid and reliable instrument, and scores on the LPI correlate with how people see your credibility and commitment, how effective you are in terms of teamwork and productivity, how people stay, what's their loyalty, what's the turnover rate. We see that there's a correlation between these things. So it makes sense to pay attention to your LPI scores if you want to not only improve your own performance, but move up as well. Because the truth is, the more frequently people experience us engaging in these behaviors, the more effective they will find us to be. It's really simple on the surface, and then it gets really interesting as we get into the details of this. So first of all, there is a measurement scale for the LPI. As I said, it measures frequency, and on a scale from 1 to 10. So your observers will be presented with these 30 items, and they'll rate how often do I see Fred or whomever it is engage in each behavior, and they'll give a score from 1 to 10, and you can see what those scores equate to. And interestingly, there is no NA or not applicable on any of the items. They're all applicable. So if a person doesn't experience you doing a particular behavior, they're just asked to give a low frequency score, 3 or less. It's not a judgment of you. It's just an observation. How often do I see these things? Now, you're going to measure yourself on these as well, so that you can compare your self-perception versus the perception of a range of other people. It's a very powerful mirror to help you understand what you're doing well, and again, what could you turn up a little bit? Because we're going to ask you to just crank the dial 5% as a result of this class on a few things, because if you do that over a long period of time, you will become much more effective and more confident in what you do. I've seen it happen many times. Okay, so on the LPI, let's give you an example of what the actual LPI behavioral items look like. I have an example of one from each of the 5 practices. So how frequently do people see you set a personal example of what you expect of others? That question, you're going to answer that question, how often you think you do that on that 1 to 10 scale. And then if you have 10 or 15 people providing input, they will also give you a numeric reply in each of those 4 categories. That's from Model the Way. From the practice of Inspire a Shared Vision, you'll be asking people how frequently they see you describe a compelling image of what our future could be like. How do they experience you talking about the future and what's possible in a way that is compelling, that is, draws them in, makes them commit? Okay. On Challenge the Process, how often do people see you experiment and take risks, even when there's a chance of failure? Because as we know, nothing works perfectly the first time. We have to try numerous times to get it right. And that process of experimentation, the scientific method, if you will, is a key tool that the leader employs to be more effective in initiating change in the organization. When it comes to enable others to act, the 4th practice of exemplary leadership, an example of one of the 6 behavioral statements is, how often do I see that this person treats others with dignity and respect? A basic human relationship skill or behavior, treating others with respect. And then finally, the 5th practice of encourage the heart. How often do people experience you giving members of the team lots of appreciation and support for their contributions? Because when it's done well, encouragement increases performance. So there's a reason to pay attention to these things. So that gives you a taste of what the 30 items on the LPI are like. Most of them are quite familiar. They're not surprising. There's a few that are a little more subtle that might take some thought, but you can complete your self-assessment in 15 or 20 minutes. And other people, it will take about the same amount of time to rate you. Just briefly, this is one graph out of the report you will receive that shows the kind of the way that the data will be displayed back to you. So at the top where it says model the way, that's a practice. We know there are 6 behaviors scored 1 to 10. So the possible score on model the way is between 6 and 60. Here the self score was 53. The average of all the observers was 45.8. And then you can see the individual observer scores displayed to the right. 1 manager, 4 direct reports, 3 colleagues, and 1 other. You can see there's significant range in how people have reported their scores. You have 1 outlier score there with D4. Very interesting numeric response. You'll see there's much more detail of this type of data display within the report, which of course we'll walk you through in class before you're actually looking at your own. Okay. So how is this going to work? To participate in the LPI is really quite simple. You're going to receive an email from our survey administrator, Samantha Kerrigan, in the next couple of days, by Monday certainly. The email will come from notifications@lpionline.com, and the subject line will be LPI Online Assessments Created. And when you get this and you open the link, it will take you to your unique web page where you'll have to create a login. If you've not participated in the LPI before, you'll have to create a login for yourself, your own account, and then you'll rate yourself on those 30 behaviors. When you think about it, how frequently do you think you do these things? In most cases, with most people, a number from 1 to 10. That'll take just a few minutes, and then you'll add your observers and put their information into the system so that they can be sent the electronic form themselves. So you want to choose between 8 and 20 people to give you feedback. People you interact with regularly, that you work with quite often, that would be best. People whose opinion matters to you. So don't just pick the people who are going to give you high scores. You know, don't just include your mom, but also some of the people that you maybe have more work to do with or something, struggle with a little bit, so that you really get useful feedback from people. And all you have to do is enter their first name, last name, and email address into the system, and that's it. So you'd be best off if you already have your list of observers ready before you go on the site, rather than be thinking about it while you're trying to enter the name. So might be a little thought for you in the next few days. Who would you like to get feedback from? And here are some suggestions. So sure, anyone who's been your boss, either currently or in the last year, say, even at a different organization, that's fine. Direct reports, those would be the people you supervise if you have any. If you don't, that's okay. Use the co-workers category. Those are your peers, the people that you work with day in and day out, where there's no reporting relationship, but you're more or less on the same level, or just interact with. You can have as many as you like. And then the other category is really quite interesting, because you can use that for anything you'd like. Customers, people often use it for their clients. If you're involved in the community, say in your community of faith or a school group or something, and you want perspective from that part of your life on how people see you leading, you can put those people in that category. It's really quite simple. All the input except for your manager, if there's only one, as I said, is confidential. You will never know who said what. Even I or Samantha, as the survey administrators, can't see that. So people feel safe to tell you what they would like you to know. Also, it doesn't say this on the slide, but there's also narrative comments available for people as observers to give written responses to 5 questions about how they find you as a leader. One of the questions is, what are this person's 3 greatest strengths as a leader, for instance? And people will just type in whatever they'd like to say, and it shows up verbatim in the report. Okay. So quite simple on the LPI. You'll get started on, we'd like you to get started on it as soon as you get the link from Samantha, because once you put the names of your observers in the system, of course, they need time to fill out the survey. So To get the best results, get your observers' names in the system within a couple of days of getting the link. Now, as for the workshop, it's over 2 days. Tuesday, March 26th will be at Gaiety, and on Thursday, April 4th, will be at the plant. And the class will run from 8 to 4:30 both days. There will be catering. You'll get more details from Carmen about any of the logistics concerning that, but mark these days on your calendar now if you haven't. There'll be full days. You'll be busy. We're asking you not to bring work to the workshop, and so you can be completely focused, which we understand means that you have to plan ahead a little bit, but at least the 2 days are a week apart. That will help. Okay. Also, there is pre-work for this workshop, which will take you about an hour. And this will be distributed probably next week to you, so you have plenty of time to prepare. And there's just 2 things we'd like you to think about. First is to reflect on a time in your own experience when you were at your best as a leader. We call this your leadership best experience. And it's just a matter of thinking about a time when you really felt like you were leading, you were going first, you were guiding people. It could be from the military, from days at school, it could be from your current work environment, doesn't really matter. Just come ready to tell the story about that. You don't need to turn in anything. It's just prepared to tell others. And then the second piece of pre-work I already mentioned, it's about thinking through where you are now in your job and your career, and what's a current opportunity you have to be just a little bit more active as a leader. Your opportunity, because we're going to ask you to put all of the work we do around the 5 practices within the context of your current situation to make it as relevant to you as possible, and you leave with an action plan of things that you're going to do differently after the workshop. Good. So yes, this will be intense. We use all the time that we can get with you, and you come prepared to be there the full time and lean in. We'll take breaks and all of that, but it's work. There's a lot of interaction also. While you'll get to listen to Gwen and me to some degree because there is information to convey and such, a lot of the real work is the discussion you will have in a group of 5 or 6 at your table with a partner. We'll also be putting you into trios for certain activities. There's some one-on-one work, of activities, full group discussion. And we can guarantee it'll be fun too. Carmen and Rich can attest to that. Gwen and I both believe that education is best when people are engaged and getting something out of it and also enjoying each other. So we make the learning environment as fun as we can. Just a little context here is, yes, we've done this workshop 3 times before with your 2 agencies, and Carmen said 80 leaders, so I'll change the slide next time. And you can see a couple of comments from past evaluations. It's really been our pleasure to work with both your agencies in creating a stronger leadership culture there. Gwen and I have both worked in a lot of government and nonprofit environments. I also do a lot of work at the University of California to create stronger communities. That's really what it's about. And that's where we're coming from. Our job is to provide you with an excellent workshop experience. And then to remind you that everything that you will ever do as a leader is based on one audacious assumption, and that is that you make a difference, because you do every day. And our job is to help you make more of a difference in a way that you would like to do in the years ahead. So with that, that's a briefing on the Leadership Challenge workshop that's coming up for your group in a few weeks. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Also, of course, Carmen and Rich will field any questions you have, or if you'd like to ask Gwen or myself a question, we can easily do that. We're both available, and looking forward to meeting you.
Any questions from the Gaiety side?
I have a question about data that there is to back up the leadership challenge. And leadership is not measurable on scale. It's, for me, at least, my definition would be the perception of you by others. So what is exact, if you can go over again and explain, is it like before and after snapshot of what people think of someone? Is that the data?
Yeah, it's the observable behaviors, like Dan said. Dan, can you hear his question?
I didn't hear it very clearly, Carmen, no.
Yeah, so, Sam over here at the Gady office is just asking if you could, explain or elaborate a little bit more about how does one discern the leadership capability of a person? Is it based on observation or what is it based on?
Yeah, it really is observation. It really is if you're, for instance, rating someone else on these 30 questions, you're just reflecting on how frequently do I experience this person doing this thing on a scale of 1 to 10, from very infrequently to very frequently, almost never to almost always. That's all. So it's not really what you think, it's what you see, if that makes sense. Because what our research has really pointed out, and why this model is so useful, is it's about what's observable. So if I see somebody engaged in setting a personal example of what they expect of others, if that's just the way I experience them, I'd give them a high frequency.
Right.
It's not a
Does
grade.
the research shows anything like, let's say, people who have attended this model or this class, that there is an improvement in before and after? Is there research on that?
Yes. Oh, yes, certainly. This is like learning a language. You know, when you first learn it, it might be a little inaccurate or inexact, but as you become more practiced, you get better. And of course, what we're pointing to is not what numeric results you get, even though those are important. They're only indicative of how effective you are. So the goal here is that we all become a little bit more visible with these 30 behaviors with more people. That is, engage in them more frequently as seen by others. And as you take the LPI several times in your career, you will see how people experience you engaging in these behaviors more frequently. So yes, we do encourage people to take the LPI more than once. The retest is about 12 to 18 months typically. And I have clients who've done it 5 times over the last 10 years, things like that, as a way of monitoring their progress as they become more influential in the organization. Because to lead is to influence. It's a little different than managing and controlling. Okay. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the LPI that this workshop, well, the participants for this workshop, will also have the opportunity to retake it in the next 12 to 18 months. So if you want to really see where you are now versus 12 to 18 months, it's included in its cost already. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a smart way to do it, because you don't measure anything once. I mean, if you were an engineer, of course, that would be an obvious statement. But this is human behavior, which is a little less predictable than machinery, but we learn and we become more effective. And the report we get typically from people, honestly, is that the LPI is an extremely useful tool for sort of assessing how other people experience you, so that you have more choices on how to proceed. Because the truth of the matter is, we get better by practice. And getting good information on how people see us now is a sure way to get more clear on what we need to practice or would benefit from. So. Okay.
Does the plant have any questions? Anyone from the plant?
No.
No, they're okay.
Good. Well, if questions come up, don't hesitate. We're here for you to make this a great workshop experience. And I think if you talk to anyone who's been in the 3 prior classes, ask them how they felt about it. But our response has been very positive, and I'm quite sure it will be this time too. We're really looking forward to meeting you. I'm sure that you'll keep Gwen and I on our toes throughout, and that's a good thing. So bring all your questions. It's fine to be skeptical about these things. I don't have any issue with that. Ask good questions, and then really think about how this affects the way you go about doing what you do on a daily basis. Because the truth is, every person in your agencies is leading every day in some way or another. The question is, can we just sharpen the focus focus a little bit to become more effective? And the answer surely is yes. So with that, if there are no further questions, I'll just say thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thank
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Look forward to seeing you. Thanks.
I just want to give you guys a quick comment about, how with the other category. You can ask your direct reports and your peers and your supervisors. If you happen to work with outside agencies, the past participants have actually sent the LPI to the other folks who they work with, especially like motion planning, or even engineering if you have other folks you connect with outside here. So that could be also your source. And everybody should have the Tuesday workshop on your calendar. If it's not on your calendar, please let me know. Otherwise, any questions, just email me or Rich. Yeah.
Just so if we are going to be going outside the organization or even within the organization, should we let people know that we're putting them on our list of, of peers and others, so they know that if they get this email out of the blue?
Yes. Well, you're asking a very good question. I'm sorry I didn't answer that earlier. Is yes. When you come up with your list of people you'd like feedback from, it's only polite if you contact them and say, hey, I'm doing this survey. The email will come from this place. When you see it, please don't just delete it, but please complete the assessment. It only takes a few minutes, and I really appreciate it. Yes, a great question.
Yeah, so
So as soon as we supply you the names, then it's out of our control. It goes out, or is there some lead time that we have to contact those people outside the organization or within the organization to expect it?
yeah.
No, you should contact them. You should contact them first, because as soon as you put the names in the system and hit submit, the emails will go out to the observers.
Okay.
Good
I was
question.
just saying, not a couple of years ago when I was getting emails, at first I thought they were spam.
Yeah, exactly. I got a bunch of them too, and I was like,
Yeah.
They keep coming. Yeah, I know. Well, no, you're asking for people to do something to help you, so it's which is to give you feedback, and that's really good if you respect people to let them know that's going to happen, and then when it's all done to say thank you. So glad you brought that up.
but is there something that you could supply us to let them know, especially people that are outside the organization, to let them know what this is about and what's expected of them and how it be used? Something that we could send to these people so they don't think it's some type of a scam to get
Or how
information
would the
from.
email look like?
Yeah.
So I do plan on sending you guys a sample email that I have used in the past myself. And I can also give you like a one-page explanation came from Integra on what the leadership challenge is, and you're welcome to share it with them.
Okay, great.
So they know what it is about, and it is important, I believe, to actually tell people. And by the way, when you tell people are busy, they might not fill the LPI right away, and so I'll keep you posted on, hey, maybe you have 20 people and only 2 people fill it out, and we're 2 days away from the deadline. So I will invite you to send a reminder or go talk to them that, hey, will you fill out my LPI? So we'll be in communication.
Yeah.
That question was
Yeah. One more detail on that is, as I said, once you enter the names into the system, the emails go out automatically. That Samantha will be sending weekly reminders that only go to the people who have not completed it. So if you've sent this to someone as an observer and they've completed it, they're done. They won't see anything else. But if you send it to someone else and they haven't gotten around to it for whatever reason, they're busy or whatnot, they'll get reminders. And that's why it's important for you to put the names in right away. So people are busy. We have to respect that. It might take them a week or 2 to get this completed.
okay.
So Carmen, to follow up on your question, if we have 20 people in there and only 2 responded, how would we know what 18 people we need to go bother?
Well,
if it's anonymous?
Well,
Or,
I believe what we, in the past, Dan, is that correct? Because in the past, I think I would just send an email to all the 20
okay,
and to say.
Yeah, I would just send it to everyone and put in there, if you've already done this, please disregard.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, that's right. We don't either. We don't know who's responded and who hasn't. So that's why the system is set up to send the reminders to everyone that you put in there, except the ones who've already completed it. The system's smart enough to know the difference. So you won't be pestering the people who've already completed this. But if you ask people up front, as you just suggested, then people know that they're being asked to do something, and the reminders will not seem as spam-like. It'll be, oh yeah, I got to get that done, because everybody's busy. It's hard to take time to do this, and you're asking people to actually stop and think about how they experience you for 15 minutes or so. It's not like a lunch order. You know, there's a little more thought that goes into it. So you're definitely asking people to be thoughtful, which takes a little time, and you'll see it works. We've had very good results in the prior 3 classes. So.
Stevie, do you have a question? Yes. Are we good over here? All right, I think we're good. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you. Bye.
Bye.